Hi, and welcome to Printin and Playin. Today we're going to be talking about a neat little tile laying game called Micropole. Micropole is a game for 1 or 2 players where the players are trying to arrange the tiles into certain patterns in order to gain more tiles throughout the course of the game, and then at the end of the game have the largest combined pattern in order to score points. So let's take a look and see how the game works. Okay, so to start a game of Micropole, each player gets a hand of 6 tiles. They are going to be kept secret. I have decided to leave them face up for illustration purposes, but normally a player would keep that secret in their hand. And they also get 3 markers to use during the game. Now this is a tile matching game, and it's important to know what the tiles do. And mainly, what you're going to be looking at is a tile is going to have one or more of these features. It is going to have what is called a micropole, which is a large colored circle in the corner, or it is going to have a catalyst, which is a gray dot or a gray plus in the corner. And those do different things. When you place them together, there are a couple rules that come into play. The first one is that you cannot make the 2 colors touch. So in my set where we have green and blue, you cannot put tiles together so that the blue touches the green. That is not allowed. However, you can do that. You have to make one color touch another. So for example, I would not be able to do this. You have to at least have one colored micropole touching another when you put it together. Additionally, if one of these corner gray catalysts gets connected to one of these colored items on the corner, that activates. And what they do is this dot will allow me to take one tile from the central supply and place it into my own personal supply. If I were to do the same thing with the plus, that allows me to take an additional turn. And that's really all there is to the rules. And what's going to happen is each player is going to take turns doing one of 3 actions. They are either going to take a tile from their hand and connect it to the tiles already out on the board. The second action is they can take from their personal stock, not from the central stock, just the personal stock, and add it to their hand as long as it doesn't go over 6. There is a hand limit of 6 tiles. Or they can take one of their marker cubes in order to mark off a grouping of a large pattern. And when you have a pattern that is closed off so that it can no longer grow, that is considered closed and will score at the end of the game when a player places their marker on it. So let me go ahead and, for illustration purposes, play a few turns just so you can see here. Okay. Now this turn, as you can see, I have a closed pattern here. There is no way for this pattern to grow. So what I can choose to do this turn is to take one of my markers, place it on there, and now that will score at the end of the game. So the game continues with each player playing tiles as shown until the game runs out of tiles, basically. And then the scoring happens as follows. For each player that marked off a closed grouping pattern, they will score 1 point for each of the micropole circles in that pattern. So this would be worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Additionally, each tile that is left over in your personal supply stack that you did not use and take into your hand is worth 2 points. And each tile that is left in your hand at the end of the game is worth an additional point. So if the game were to end here, and it wouldn't because we have lots of tiles left, but let's just say if it did, the blue player would score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points. Taking that into account, both players try to close off as large groups as possible, basically without using any more tiles than they have to. And then at the end of the game, the player, of course, with the most points wins the game. Okay, so Micropole should be a pretty easy build. You only really need a few things to get started. First off, you're going to need the actual game tiles, and that is just one color page that is printed off. And that's if you get this version as far as the color page goes. The original is actually black and white, but fans of the game have actually made several different versions of the game that you can download. Some that come in a few different color varieties. There is a farm version. As I recall, there's a flowers and bees version, and I think there may be a couple other versions out there as well that are slipping my mind right now. I decided to go with the blue and green version quite simply because when playing games I prefer to play with blue and my wife prefers to play with green. But there are a few different ones that you can pick, and go out to the website and take a look at the few different ones that you can choose from. So we start out with that, and then that's just paper printed on cardstock. So we need to actually make tiles with that, so we're going to need something to glue it onto to make a backing. And what I am going to use for that is a cereal box. And I tend to use a lot of these. I love using cereal boxes for print and play crafting. I think the thickness is okay. It's not quite as thick as a store-bought game tile would be. But these things, and not just cereal boxes, but different types of foods. I'll use different boxes from different things. And I mean, they're readily available. They're easy to work with, and as long as you're, already eating the food anyway, it's free. So hey, why not? That, and lastly, you're going to need something to glue it with. So you're going to need to pick up some spray adhesive. Now just a moment here, and we'll go ahead and we'll start the gluing process. Alright, now when using spray adhesives, there's a couple of things I like to do. One is I need to protect my work surface because honestly the glue kind of gets everywhere. As you see, just around here I've kind of repurposed a hardware store flyer that I get in the mail for that. Perfect use for junk mail is just to throw it on your workbench in order to keep stuff from getting all over your workbench. And also I'll usually use a block of wood or something like that to put underneath what I'm applying the glue to, just so that it's a little bit easier to pick up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tiles, flip this over, and apply my glue. If this is a full sheet being applied and not being cut apart, I probably wouldn't put as much glue down, but since these are all going to come out the individual tiles, I want to make sure it's kind of an even layer across the whole page there. Alright, so we got the glue applied, and then we need our backing. So I'll go ahead and just move this over a little bit. Get our cereal box. You can see it's just plain cardboard on the other side. Get our tiles with the glue applied on the back, centered on there. Kind of smooth it out, being kind of careful to not get the glue all over the place. And then we just let that dry for a little bit. Alright guys, for this shot I had to change cameras, but hopefully it won't be too much different. Alright, so it's been a couple of hours. Got our glues dry here. And I get to actually kind of record my first blooper here. You may recall when I went and glued this on there, I had a bunch of newspaper laid out on the workbench because I was mentioning that we were probably going to get glue all over the place. and that we needed to protect from that. Well, then what I did immediately after gluing this was I took it, slapped it down in the middle of all the glue on the paper, and now I have a bunch of newspaper glued to the back of my tiles. So yeah, that's a tip there. If you are getting done gluing this, be sure to place it somewhere other than in the middle of the area you glued. But that aside, we have our sheet glued onto the cardboard and we're ready to cut. This is also going to be my first time trying this type of paper cutter. I usually use a straight ruler and a rotary blade. But I went ahead and I picked up this. I thought it was a good deal that I found a guillotine cutter for yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a try. I do have a little bit of hesitancy using those just because it's hard to sometimes, go up against the back here and cut, because honestly, inkjet printers, from my experience, have a tendency to not print perfectly straight. But we'll see what goes on here using this way anyway. I'll probably just line up with the blade edge here rather than using the straight edge on the back, especially starting out here. In order to clean off the edges here, I went ahead and I drew a couple of pencil marks here to show where we need to cut, and I'm going to take just a second to line that up on my cutter. Line that up there, line that up there. That looks about right. And we have a pretty clean edge there. So over to the other side, give this another try. Actually, you can see maybe there's a little bit of an edge there that didn't get cut, so I'm going to see if I can fine-tune this just slightly. Careful that the blade doesn't come down on me. It should be alright. Yeah, I can see my pencil mark there is still there too, so there we go. Perfect. Then we line up our edges over here. That looks good. And then the same over here. Try to get it exactly right against the edge there. Right, and that's pretty much perfect. So now what we need to do is, you might be able to see here, each one has a little crop mark. And we basically need to go through and do exactly the same thing following these crop marks. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that, and I'll go ahead and I'll speed things up as we go through this. Okay, so now we have all of our strips that we need to cut down into tiles. So there are our game tiles. There. See, now they're all, we have about 1-inch tiles, cardboard on the back, and they all fit together pretty nicely. Okay, so we've got our tiles now, and the only thing we need to play is 3 different markers for each player. And the rules recommend decorative glass rocks, glass stones, glass beads, whatever you want to call them. And they're the kind of things that you can buy at your hobby stores. They're usually used to put in decorative vases and things like that. I decided to go with cubes since I actually had those laying around. And to match the theme, I decided to go with 3 green and 3 blue cubes. Got them bagged up here. These are actually bead bags. You can buy those in stores that do crafting as far as beaded jewelry. People will put their beads and beaded jewelry in these type of bags, and they work perfectly for game crafting as well. And then the way we're going to store those is, those of you who are old enough to remember VHS tapes, I have a VHS case here. It is the perfect size. Let's go ahead and put those in there. Put our beads in there. I have the instructions printed out in booklet form. Just give that a fold. Close her up. And we have our completed game.